Let's talk about creating fantasy creatures that stand out. Also aliens. The question is, how do you make them unique? There are many ways to do that, but in this video I am going to focus on birth, reproduction, and lifespan. This is the first video in a series where I am going to talk about creating fantasy creatures and specifically a few different ways to make them unique, a few different aspects to focus on to make your fantasy creatures more unique, stand out a bit more. If that's something you're interested in, definitely consider subscribing because again, there will be more videos after this one. But let's get into this video. Again, birth, reproduction, and lifespan, and we are going to jump straight into the juicy bits and talk about sex. Not the act, the biology. And the basic question here is, does your species have males, females, and or other genders, or biological sexes? Because we're talking about biological sex in this video, not about gender identity, because this is about reproduction, and yeah, biology is real and all that stuff. So like I said, the first question is, do you have males and females? Do you have both of them? Because you don't need to. There are species that actually only have female. And also consider, do you have equal numbers of males and females, or are there many more males than females or many more females than males? Also remember that an individual's sex doesn't have to be static. It can be something that changes over time. So it can change at a certain age, you go from male to female, or vice versa, or something in between. It can be while you're having sex, the actual act. That can be when you decide, or when your body decides, or whatever decides what your biological sex is right now. Or maybe the species changes as they give birth. As they give birth, the female changes into a male. Or it can depend on more outside factors like climate and temperature, or if there is a surplus or a shortage of a certain sex at the moment and the species need more of that, and then some individuals change their sex. That happens. And I mentioned earlier choosing your sex, and that is also a possibility that you can pick and choose which biological sex you want to have right now, or that the parents, for example, choose which sex the offspring is going to have, like with bees. Knowing which biological sexes exist within your species is of course important when it comes to reproduction. And another relevant thing when it comes to reproduction is, how does this species fertilize eggs and give birth? Because there are many options, and they could be explored more. Is fertilization internal or external? That's one fairly easy question to answer. Does reproduction happen sexually or asexually? Again, if there's a species where there are only females, then you will probably have asexual reproduction. Not to say they couldn't engage in sexual activities if they wanted to, but then I guess that would be more for recreation than reproduction. And there's nothing wrong with that. Once fertilization has happened, then how do they give birth? Is it live births? Do they lay eggs? Do they grow their fetus out of their body in some way? There are probably many other ways to do it, but those were the ones that I could think of right now. Also, is it the male or the female that carries? It's easy to default to it being the female that carries the child, but that is not a necessity. That doesn't have to be the way it is, and it could be fun if there were more species where the male was actually the one to carry the child. Also consider sexuality and pairings. Is heterosexuality the norm? Is it common with homosexuality or bisexuality or asexuality or any other sexuality? For example, in a species where there is an unequal number of males and females, maybe homosexuality is common within the majority. Also, do they mate for life? Do they mate with one individual at a time or more? Are there polycules or harems and things like that? There are so many different options that doesn't have to be a man and a woman. With that, now that we have reproduction under control, let's talk about lifespans. Once you're born, how long do you live? And it's fun to be creative here as well. It can be anything from a few hours to a few centuries or millennia. There are species of dragonfly, for example, that can live for like only a day or two, and then there are whales that can live for hundreds of years, and we all know turtles can live for many centuries. So there is a great span there to play around with. And you could also consider whether they die of old age or if there is something else that usually kills them. There are a fair few species in our world that die as they give birth or as they fertilize. So there are always those kinds of options as well. Now, obviously, there needs to be time for one generation to spawn the next generation. They have to live for that long at least, but that also depends on when the species becomes sexually mature and can actually reproduce. But one fun thing to remember is that it's entirely possible for the first generation to die before the second generation actually hatches. This happens in a fair few species in our world as well. So it could be that fertilization happens, you lay the eggs, and then that generation dies off, and the next generation doesn't hatch until the next day, week, month, year, century. That could be a pretty fun thing if it's a creature that everyone believes is extinct, but it's just because the next generation hasn't hatched yet. I think that could be pretty cool. I might actually use that sometime. As you can tell, I've only mentioned a few of the many ways that you can make your fantasy creatures unique just in this aspect of their biology. And you don't have to do anything with any of these things or with anything else, but hopefully you can take at least something of this and become inspired to do your own thing. Next time we're going to talk about food, which is always a fun topic, so don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss that. Thank you for watching, stay safe, and I will see you next time.